It is.
Okay. So Jesus has been, oh man, amazing how rusty I can get in 4 days. Jesus has been teaching. That's right. Yes, he's been teaching the people, and he's told them, they're saying, we follow Moses, we don't follow you, we don't quite know what the deal is with you. And he says to them, if you believe Moses,
Over closer to Danielson.
you can sit here if you want to. Or put the phone over here. Yeah. If you believe Moses, you would believe me, because Moses wrote about me. So that's where this story picks up. So Jesus, now we need it. Okay. Jesus crosses the lake with his disciples.
He walked?
They rowed it. Okay, so that's or they
Sailed.
sailed.
They
Yeah,
sailed.
they sailed. He crossed the lake with his disciples, and a large crowd was following him because of the miracles that he'd been doing. And so when they got to the other side, Jesus and his disciples went up on a mountainside and sat down. And Jesus looked up and he saw a large crowd coming to him, and he said to Philip, "Where are we going to get food? Where are we going to buy food so that we can feed this crowd?" And Philip said, even 200 days' wages wouldn't buy enough food to give these people but just a little bit. And Andrew, another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to Jesus, "Here's a little boy with 5 loaves and 2 fishes. But what's that for this crowd?" And Jesus told them, "Have the people sit down." And so the people sat down, and there was a lot of grass in that area. And so people sat down, and then Jesus took the loaves and gave thanks for them and distributed them to the crowd. And he did the same thing with the fish. And everyone had plenty to eat. They were full. And when they were getting satisfied, Jesus said to his disciples, "Take baskets and collect the leftover pieces of bread so that nothing may be lost." And when they collected all the fragments of bread, they got 12 baskets full. And the crowd, when they saw what Jesus had done, they began saying to each other, "Truly, this is the prophet who was going to come into the world." Jesus perceived that they were going to take him by force and make him king. So he went off to the mountains by himself. And that's where I end the story anyways. But more that happens obviously after that, the whole crossing.
And the next story, though.
Yeah. Another story with the walking on water and stuff after that. So, let's see. Does anybody want to try to retell that badly told story? See if you can remember that.
I don't know how much I can remember details.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Let's see. I forgot to do the whole little closing thing.
so Jesus was, let's see, and if he went out in the countryside, and the crowd followed him, and he and his disciples went up on a mountainside, and he was teaching the crowd. And he said to Philip, "How are we going to feed these people?" And Philip says 200 days' wages would not be enough. It would only give everybody a little bit. And then Andrew said, "Here I am, this kid. Got 5 loaves and 2 fishes."
He doesn't want to let go of his food. He ain't getting my food. Very good.
But what is that for all these people? And Jesus said, "Well, have all the people sit down." There was a lot of grass there, and he said, "Have all the people sit down in the grass." And then he told the disciples to feed them. And so they went and fed all the people, and everybody was full. And then Jesus said, go take baskets and pick up what's left over so that there's nothing will be lost. So they went and picked up baskets, and there were 12 baskets full. And let's see, then the people saw who he was, and he says, "This truly must be the prophet who is to come." And Jesus saw that they were going to try and force him to be king, so he went off on the mountainside by himself. I think that's where he ended it.
Yeah, very good. And I was reading through there, I saw some pieces I missed, so when I do that, leaving the blank, so I'll get those filled in hopefully. So, Jesus and his disciples
Sailed across the sea.
crossed over to the other side, and there was a large crowd.
Crowd of people.
What should I do, a crowd? Crowd, maybe like that? Crowd of people following, because what did they see?
Because of the miracles.
Miracles.
Kids and Jesus doing. And when they got to the other side, he and his disciples
Climbed up into the
to the mountainside and
sat down.
and Jesus looked up and saw
The crowds of people.
coming, and he said to
Philip,
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 "Where are we going to
get food.
buy
on
food to feed this crowd?" And this is one section I left out. It says, Jesus already knew what he was going to do, but he said this to test Philip. Right? It's important. And so Philip says, well, we go down to the corner grocery store and
No.
200 days' wages
Right.
would not be enough to feed all of them.
yeah, 200 days wages. So, and then somebody else has an idea. Andrew, one of the disciples, he says,
I have a kid that
Yeah.
has.
drag him in.
5 loaves and 2
two
fishes.
fishes, yeah. And Jesus said, have the people,
Sit,
and there was a lot of
grass.
grass. So the people sat down, and the men were about, this is another part I left out, the men were about
5,000.
five, a lot of fives there. You do 5,500, which is zeros or something. Wrong side, there we go. 5,000 in number. And Jesus took the bread and
Gave thanks.
and
Disperse.
distributed it, and likewise with the fish, as much as they wanted. And when they were
Full.
full, he said to the
Disciples.
disciples, gather the
The remaining.
Leftover,
leftover fragments of
the bread and the
bread.
fish.
They just said bread. Oh, strangely.
Hmm.
That's interesting.
They ate all the fish.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe the fish was more popular, or yeah, or they.
Well, there were only 2
Well, they
fish, so
didn't
there might
really-
have still been less percentage
Yeah,
wise.
right, okay. Or maybe they didn't like the fish as well. And no, we don't want any leftover fish. The
Fish goes bad.
yeah, although I think they had a way of drying it or salting it or something. Probably, I don't know for sure. Let's see.
And there
So
was-
they gathered
12.
12
Baskets.
baskets, and when the crowd saw the sign that Jesus had done, they began saying, "Truly, this is the prophet who is to come into the
World.
world." And Jesus, he
Perceive.
perceived that they were going to come
Make him king.
by
Force.
and make him
King.
king. He went off into the
Mountains to pray.
Wilderness.
mountain by himself. Yeah, good. Okay. Let's see. So, first of all, this we see in a lot of Jesus stories, but the stories about Jesus. What do we learn about Jesus from the fact that he's leaving a crowd at the beginning of the story?
That he's what?
Leaving a crowd at the beginning of the story. And he's crossing. There's a crowd of people on one side of the lake, and he's crossing to the other side. And it takes a faster method of transportation than they have. So, what do we learn about Jesus from that?
He's popular.
Okay, good. That's for sure. Yeah.
He's trying to get away a little bit by himself, maybe.
what effect does that have on Jesus' ministry? The fact that we see that a lot in his ministry, that where he would leave a crowd. What effect did that have on his ministry?
They would follow him if they could, and wherever he went, as soon as they saw him, a huge crowd would gather.
Okay. Okay. And what would it? So another way of saying it, what might have been the result if he had just stayed with the crowds more instead of leaving them so much?
They'd want more food.
Right.
Okay. This is before the food thing, though.
I know, but he did.
Well, he wouldn't have time with his small group of disciples to
Okay,
teach
yeah.
them more deeply.
Yeah, there you go.
And he wouldn't have time away by himself.
Yes.
And so, there's probably a better story to point out that observation, but if we see it somewhat here in the story, that Jesus was constantly filtering these disciples, the ones that were serious about him would follow, they would walk around a long distance to continue. So the ones that got to be there for the feeding, they were somewhat more serious than just people that didn't want to go for the hike. So he's always constantly filtering people, stretching them to see, if you really want to be with me, so you focus on the ones that were serious. So I'm not supposed to do what I just did, because I just gave you a sermon.
So don't do what I do?
I'm not supposed to give you a sermon, I just gave you a sermon, and there's probably a better passage to do that with. Let's see. So then, okay, this was just kind of interesting detail. Any thoughts on what the strategic advantage to Jesus was of going up on a hillside instead of just staying down by that?
They could hear him better.
Okay.
And see him.
Okay. Yeah. And
What?
and
Hear and see him better.
yeah.
Right, but like Jesus always knows what he's doing, and there was grass up there.
Okay, good.
So to me, it's like he knew. Well, he already knew. So he provided that place of having the crowd be able to.
And the grass,
sit
it was
before
his
him,
grass.
And
Yeah, because
but it was a bigger place for the crowd as well.
Yeah, because it does point out that there's grass in the story, and it's
Yeah.
like, why would it say that if it wasn't important?
Yeah, so he definitely had he had it all. He knew ahead of time the crowd, the amount, just like he said with Philip. He knew how he was going to feed him.
Interesting. Well, so you got something I hadn't even seen, and then that made me think you're not supposed to bring in other passages, but that made me think of Psalm 23 about.
The shepherd.
Yeah, the shepherd.
I thought of that too.
Yes, there he is doing that. Okay, wow. The reason I thought of him leading up on the mountainside was because he'd be able to see the crowd coming and be more prepared for that. So, anyways, I like your answer
You're
better.
like, oh!
Now what? No, that's not Jesus. He couldn't have done that.
Okay, so the story actually tells us the reason why Jesus asks Philip that question. But instead of just asking Philip the question, what else could Jesus have done? What other choices did he have when he sees the crowd coming?
He could have just fed him without even consulting with the disciples.
Okay, good. What else?
He'll let him go hungry.
Yeah, okay.
Made him go home.
Yeah.
Fasting today.
Yeah. Okay, what other choices did he have? One that I was thinking of is he could have asked the question of all 12 of the disciples instead. So, what was what do we learn about Jesus and maybe about Philip from the fact that Jesus just asked Philip initially?
Well, actually, I kind of saw. He asked Philip, and then and then Andrew had to answer. And Philip is more of that type of person that numbers. He has the numbers. He can figure it out in numbers. And Andrew seemed like the fix-it kind of guy, finding a way to come up with a solution.
Yeah, okay.
You know.
Your fingers in front of the camera there.
You're right.
So I don't know. I saw that because because I'm the type of person that always tries to find a solution. I'm not a numbers person. So I saw the difference between the two, and I said, I'm more like Andrew. At least I'm like somebody.
Yeah, interesting.
But anyway.
Okay, good. That's a good observation. And why, let's see, no, I'm not supposed to say why when you ask questions in this, but again, what do we learn about Jesus from the fact that he initially, we learned something about Andrew from the fact that he answered a question he wasn't even asked. But what do we learn about Jesus and Philip from the fact that Jesus was focusing his question specifically on Philip? Just roughly.
Maybe Philip is the kind that will say why we can't do something. So then Jesus is giving me a chance to say, well, we can't do it, and then showing him how it can be done.
The,
He continues to show more of his tricks or more of his power with each story. You know, once he's quieting a storm, another one he's feeding people, another one he's healing, another is delivering.
more of his character.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like Jesus knows the specific needs of the spiritual needs of his disciples, like you were saying. You know, Andrew's one kind of personality, and Philip's another kind of personality, and Philip needed a particular stretch in this area. So Jesus was able to not just even, teach his disciples as a clump, but to focus on them individually too, which is what do you remember? What do you notice? I tried to kind of emphasize it when I told the story without being too obvious, but about Jesus' question of Philip. It's kind of a weird question in a way. Philip kind of answered one part of the question, and Andrew hit on another aspect of it.
Wait, and how are we going to feed these people?
Yeah, you remember the exact question?
That's what I was trying to.
Where
Where are we going to get the
are we
food?
going to buy enough food to feed these people?
Mhm.
So they had two problems if they went that route.
Mhm.
Getting enough money to pay for the food and then finding
And then where
a
would
place.
Ways to get the food.
Because I mean, even today, if you tried to go to Walmart and buy enough food to feed 5,000 people, I don't know if you could.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have enough in stock.
Yeah, they wouldn't have enough stock. So,
So basically, the question that was proposed to them, they're seeing that there is absolutely no way in their heads. There's absolutely no way. Except for Jesus.
yes. And
He loves to make ways.
what do you think the answer that Jesus would have liked to have gotten from Philip was? If he had passed the test, what would the correct answer have been?
Oh, Philippians 4:13, all things are possible with Christ who saves.
Philippian, that's
You
pretty
are the bread
good.
of life. He wouldn't
That's
get
pretty
that
good.
from non-Christians. Huh?
Philip.
So, what do we notice about, so both Philip and Andrew, did they pass the test or fail the test here?
Well, Philip failed it because he was saying why we can't do it. Andrew said, here's what we have, so basically.
He was halfway there.
Yeah, it's halfway here, so okay, so here's something, we've got something, he's kind of finding a small solution, but he said, what is this for so many people?
Yeah.
What do we learn about Jesus from his reaction to their not having the right answer to the question?
Well, he wasn't mad at them.
Mhm.
He just gave them like a command to have them sit down, have the people sit down, the crowds.
What other choices did Jesus have at this point? What are
Well, he
ways
could have reprimanded him and said, "How long have I been with you? And you don't know."
Yeah, it comes later, right? But yeah, here Jesus is, even though they flunked the test, so to speak, they actually did learn something, which by the time the story was over with. So in Jesus' eyes, even though they got an F, they learned something, so it was worthwhile, and he didn't get on their case. And what role did the disciples get to play in this miracle?
They help serve.
Mhm.
Okay.
Serve it.
Yeah, it doesn't say that part specifically in John's account. I'm doing the one from John 6, but
But they gathered it up.
yeah, it
And
did.
they
It does
saw
say
it.
they got to pick up the pieces, and that they were the ones that tell the people to sit down.
Mhm.
They were the ones to bring the boy, right? To Jesus?
Andrew brought the boy.
That's right. Yep, okay, good.
I liked the way she dragged him in.
Yeah.
I just, when you're doing that, I go, I gotta do that.
You wanted to give it a lunch.
You will not go.
Oh, yes, this is just another interesting aspect. Backing up to where Jesus had them sit down, what do you think the result of Jesus having people sit down before he does the miracle of the food? What do you think the result of having them sit down first was?
I think it allows for everybody to see,
Good, good.
and to me, to control a crowd, you have them sit. you know.
And then there's some anticipation because, okay, we're sitting down for a reason
Yeah,
here.
yeah, okay.
That's the thing, anticipation. Yeah. We're going to eat somehow.
If they hadn't sat down first, what might have been the result?
I think nobody would have known what was happening with the baskets being passed around or the fish being passed around, and you have men, you have the women, and then you have children there. That
Total chaos.
yeah, it would be
It could have
chaos,
turned into a stampede. Everybody
Yeah,
came out
right,
there.
yeah.
And that's, and so, yeah,
like a
I
swap meet.
realized Jesus' wisdom in having them do that first. So everybody could see the miracle and there wasn't a big
Yeah. Confusion.
stampede.
Yeah, something.
Let's see. And then. at
Too
what
bad he
point-
didn't have them answer a Bible question first so they could just find out who was getting fed first, you know?
At what point did the miracle actually happen, do you think, based on what we saw in the story?
At the end, when they gathered up the baskets? No? And there was 12? No?
That demonstrated it.
Before that, because the people were already full.
Oh, yeah,
So,
that's true.
yeah.
I mean, I think it started when Jesus gave thanks.
Sometime right in that time, when he gives thanks for it, then.
He's thanking for, as if it's already happened.
Exactly. Yeah, thank you, you've given us 5 loaves of 2. Oh, and this is another. Okay, so he gave them, and, let's see this. What other choices, besides multiplying bread and fish, what other choices or options what other ways could Jesus have fed them?
Sent the guys out in their boat for fish.
Okay, right. Keep going. Think
Manna.
creatively now. What other ways could he, or what other things could he have fed them?
Quail.
Okay, right, yeah, okay, we've seen that before, right?
Turn rocks into food.
Yeah, okay, good. Could command the stones. Okay, good. Okay, what else?
Manna.
Yeah, it could have had. Yeah. Okay. What else?
I mean, had some animals walk in to be slaughtered.
Okay. Yeah, good, okay. Yeah.
The food caravan comes driving.
And the camel breaks down right there. Hey, would you guys mind if we donated this food? So, what do we learn about? Let's see. Yes, what do we learn about? Let's see. Was there anything significant about the specific choice of food that Jesus used at this point?
You mean that was from the boy, or
Okay, the source would be one thing.
or the kind of food, the bread? And,
Yeah,
I
then
mean,
the
that
kind
was
of, yeah.
that was their normal diet was bread and fish.
Okay. And thinking about, if you remember the intro to the story, what had been happening before was people were kind of skeptical about Jesus. We follow Moses, we're not sure about you. And he says, if you believed Moses, you would believe me, because Moses wrote about me. Does that give you any clue about maybe part of his reason for food choices here?
Well, because God provided in the desert
Okay.
with Moses with manna, bread.
And then, so we see, especially the bread being significant, where Israel's history in the wilderness. Okay, so they're in the Old Testament, they're in a desert area that provides bread miraculously. And then, do you think of one of the three temptations that Jesus had that would kind of tie into this story also?
What, turning the stones into bread?
Right, where Jesus was tempted to turn the stones into bread, which was kind of like him experiencing the same kind of temptation that Israel had experienced in the wilderness and failed when they doubted God's provision for them. And so here's Jesus getting the same kind of temptation to provide food, bread for himself. And he's passing the temptation. So then now he's going back, giving part of the nation of Israel another revelation that he's preaching. Do you see the connection I'm trying to draw between the three stories? Okay, I'm losing
Well, you didn't get to when they collected the baskets full, it was bread. You said bread, and it wasn't fish at the end. They just collected the bread, the pieces of bread. And there was 12 baskets. Well, that's the 12 tribes, is how I see it. And it's also bread, which is, well, I don't know if it's gotten there yet, but the house of bread.
Yeah,
Bethlehem.
right, where was Jesus born? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
The Bethlehem means house of bread.
Mhm.
So, and then,
What about the fish? What do you do with the fish?
I'm not sure.
eaten.
Oh, good. I've been trying to figure that out.
Yeah, I'm not sure because they,
Well,
other
but
than
there
it
was
was bread and
a,
meat, and they had quail in the wilderness or something.
yeah, but they were fishermen. I mean, his disciples, most of them were called out of being fishermen. I don't know. I don't know what the bird, fish is about.
Yeah. The other observation
Fishes
about this
men.
is, was this like, which kind of restaurant today would serve this kind of food? If we're gonna, was this like Olive Garden, or is this Burger King, or somewhere in between? Or is it?
What's that, Captain?
Red Lobster.
Okay.
Close. Captain. There's one that does fish and chips, you know.
Okay.
Oh,
The point I was trying to get at is this wasn't real, it was good, nourishing food, but it wasn't, cake and caviar.
it wasn't
Yeah.
gourmet.
Yeah, it was just simple food that they were used to. You didn't give them something,
About
something really expensive or whatever.
And it was healthy versus the junk they.
You still there, Mom?
It was disconnected or something.
Okay, that's weird. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so, what have we learned about, we've seen, well, we've been saying here, Jesus used this, Jesus had a bigger purpose in picking these particular foods than just feeding. It wasn't just to fill their stomachs. He had a bigger purpose in picking these particular foods. What do we learn about Jesus from what he's doing here, feeding the crowd?
Jesus is God.
Okay, that's for sure, yeah.
He's the bread of life.
Uh-huh, good.
He can do anything.
And, let's see. What time is it anyway?
Oh.
Look at your. Look at, the clock is in the other room.
3:13, okay, wow, already gone half an hour. How did you do it so fast?
I don't know. I didn't ask very many questions, I guess.
Let's see, so let me, on this up kind of quickly.
Well, one thing I noticed is like, he didn't just take it out of nowhere. He took
Yes.
what was given, what they had, and there's other Bible stories too, where like Elisha with the well with oil, what do you have?
Yeah.
And or Elijah with the woman that had the oil and flour. It's like they take what the person has and then use the miracle to make it more.
Which is what he does with us.
Yes, what would be an example of that happening today?
He takes who we are and what he's created us for, and he uses us for a bigger purpose, his purpose, as long as we give it to, like, give what we have to him and allow him to do it, then he multiplies it.
Yeah.
Right, or helps us do something that no way could we do on our own.
Right,
Stretches us beyond what we could do humanly, or
Mhm.
stretches our.
you know, kind of like when Andrew said, well, this is what we have,
Mhm.
and that's kind of how we come, like, here I am,
Mhm. Mhm.
you know?
Amen. Here I am, whatever you want.
Do.
Yes. Yes. Then I do want to go on some because of when, I probably should have put this in the intro actually, but when the crowd says, and truly this is the prophet who is to come in the world, they're referring to Deuteronomy 18:15, where Moses had said, the Lord will raise up a prophet like you from among you. And when he comes, you must listen to him. And so usually in the Bibles, they'll put a prophet with a capital P in the New Testament, because they were looking like, they also had asked John the Baptist earlier, are you the prophet? He said, no, I'm not the prophet. So they were looking for this prophet guy and that Moses had foretold. And now they finally made the connection. This guy must be the prophet that Moses told us. And you see the connection between that and what happened right before the story where Jesus is saying, you know, if you believe Moses, you believe because he wrote about me. So here,
So now-
they're just giving an example. He's just giving them an example of one place where Moses wrote about. So they finally made the connection. But what do we learn about the people and about Jesus from the very last verse in the story where Jesus realizes they're going to come take him by force, make him king, so Jesus leaves. What do we learn from that?
Well, the people thought that the Messiah was going to be a political king that would save him from the Roman oppression. And Jesus knew that that was not his intention, and he didn't, so he had to leave so that he wouldn't be forced to do something that he didn't come to do.
Good. And today, what kind of things do people want Jesus to rescue them from?
Themselves.
Well, hopefully that would be a proper rescue there.
Their problems.
I get you back up and
The
do
problems
this.
that they created
Yeah,
themselves,
do we ever want Jesus to be kind of
the fix-it
the
man.
fix-it man?
Well, yeah, and then there's the prosperity gospel preachers and
Yeah.
all that, so that's what Jesus said, give you riches.
Mhm.
Like when they, because, well, I'm studying John, but it just seems like they want to go for that satisfaction of I'm hungry, you know, I have this need, I have that need, but it's temporary, but not the real issue
Mhm.
of the satisfaction that they need, which is Jesus in their heart, you know. They're always wanting like a superficial thing,
Mhm.
you
I think there's just such irony in the way he says that we're going to take him by force and make him king.
know.
Because if you make somebody king, then he's not really king.
No.
He's not really in charge, is he? You know,
They
force
would
you to
be
be
in
king.
charge.
Yeah, the people would be. So, in what ways are we like that, or are people like that today with God?
Well, they
Telling
see
him
God the
what-
way they want to see God.
Yeah, making God in their own image, how's that?
Yeah.
And then when
And
they
then
do
they,
that,
and then they get mad because he didn't do what they wanted.
yeah, but isn't it? We kind of want to take God and make him God the way we want him to be, right? Take him by force and make him God. Let's see. Pull up one of the personal application from this story. Today, does Jesus still put his followers in situations where they don't have enough for the needs around them to accomplish what Jesus wants to do? Does he ever put his followers in situations where they don't have?
Sure.
Okay. What does that look like? What are some examples of how that happens today?
Churches with no budget.
Okay.
Hmm. Yes. They go out and borrow and build a big building and then,
Oh, well, that would be their fault, though. But situations where God actually puts you in it, where
mission trips. How's that? That's where he hangs you out to dry.
Okay, okay, yeah. Which is something beyond
Yeah.
what you're.
When you go, you're totally relying on him.
Exactly. Well, sometimes you can go and not, but it doesn't work out well.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't work out very well.
Or maybe somebody's in a bad financial situation through no fault of their own, and God comes through in miraculous ways to get them, just so they have the money to pay their bills or whatever.
But God allows them to get to a point where they realize just how needy and unsolvable, in other words, God puts them in an unsolvable situation before he bails them out of it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, sometimes it's like to the last minute. and it
Yeah,
comes
right.
through.
I have another story about that one.
Sounds good, you want to share it?
Oh, gosh. It was, the kids were young, and my husband had back problems, and it got to the point where he was going to have surgery on his back. But I was fighting it tooth and nail because I was home with the kids, and there would be no income, and, you know, it was just awful. And it was to the point where it was like, I couldn't even look at my husband because it made me face the fact that this was going to happen, and I couldn't do it. So Jim was telling me, what do you want me to do? I can't change the situation. And it was more like I was angry at God. So I ran to the room and I was just screaming out like, Lord, I just don't understand why you can't just heal him, and why we have to go through this. We don't have any money. We don't have this. And I heard this still small voice telling me, what do you need? And I'm like, why? We need this. We need rent. We're gonna need to pay the car payment. He goes, write it down. So I'm like, okay. So I wrote it all down. He goes, read it to me. So I read everything. And he goes, I have it under control. And I just broke. And I said, I was on my knees, and I just said, Lord, I trust you through this. I trust you totally through this. And the next day, my husband couldn't even get out of bed. I mean, because it was like the Lord was waiting for me to accept and just trust him. And that happened, and then he was out of work for almost 8 months. And we had a Bible study in our house, and it was amazing. All the different people, just like one guy worked for a fish company where he would deliver fresh fish and fresh soups every day to all the restaurants. He came by once a week with clam chowder and a big thing of fish. And then we would get groceries on our doorstep. We had money like under our mat. It was so much that we had to use our next door neighbor's freezer, who was not a Christian. And then we had $5,000 left over in an envelope, because we were like really making sure that we only spent what we were supposed to spend. We had $5,000 left over in an envelope on the refrigerator when my husband went back to work. And there was a family that was going to go on a missionary trip for 2 years with Wycliffe. They were going to be the house parents in the Philippines. And they were short money, and they were getting ready to leave. So we prayed about it, and so we just gave it to them. And they said, that's exactly the amount we needed.
Oh, wow.
And then there was all this food in the freezer, like all this fish. I mean, we ate so good. I mean, better than anything. And so we decided that we would have everybody from our group, our Bible study, and people at our church that helped us. And we had a big party at my mom and dad's house at the pool. And we barbecued all the fish, everything. It was just so wonderful. It was just like, and God did it, And so then next time we went through different trials, it's like, God can do it, God can do it, So
It's a really, really neat story.
it's like, how do you not trust
Yeah.
after that, So it was awesome. So,
It was great.
you
That
have
it?
to always remember those times, when you go through hard times like that. So.
I hope you share all that too.
I do with people that are struggling with that.